Okay, so we're continuing on Mishnas Sofrim. We're going to try and do two letters today, Ches and Tes. The Ches is an interesting letter. The Ches, if you look at it, is made up of two Zayins. Can you see that? Yeah, it's made up of two Zayins, and it's got a little bridge at the top. So we're going to be discussing the letter Ches and then it's from the letter Tes today. So it says, Mishnas Sofrim, Tzuras Ois Ches. Ois Ches, Hi Tia Shtei Ragleho Ketmunas Shnei Zayin. The Ches should have is made up of two Zayins. V'hazayin shebetzad yamin, and the Zayin which is on the right hand side, Nochen lasis keren reishe ogul betzad hayomin. The right hand one should be a little bit circular. It should be rounded off. Yeah, so not like two blocks like that, but rather it should be rounded off like that. Yeah, Eli, we're on 284. That was picture number 1 and 2. V'yu hazayin rechoikin zemezeh, and the two Zayins should be distant from each other. At least the thickness of a kulmus. Now that means the top of the Zayin, the Zayin at the top, not the bottom bit, but the top bit. In between, there should be a mole kulmus, which is a thickness of the quill used to write. V'yu mechubarin b'chatoteres yachtov. And then they should be joined by a bridge at the top, who come in gag gavaya, like a little roof, makel, which is like a little staff, a stick, a line, who come in tag godel, like a large crown, yaseh lo bereish regel hasmol. So the Ches has a little tug coming out of the top left one, of the left Zayin. V'lo be'emtza, and not in the middle of that left hand Zayin, but rather on the left hand side of it. Okay. You shouldn't make. You got to make sure the Ches. Yeah, you got that's your Ches. Two Zayins with a bridge on the top, with a little tug coming out of the left hand side, like we said, and a rounded right hand side. But you got to be careful that the Ches shouldn't be too wide. Right? You shouldn't put two Zayins too much away from each other. Why not? Because and if you were marich, you made it too much of a gap, parcel. And you've got no tikkun because it's going to be a problem of being out of order. Yeah.
Sometimes in like Megillas Esther, they have like longer letters.
So we saw that it is possible to stretch letters, but there are rules of when you can stretch it, when you can't. And if it doesn't change the tzura of the letter, the shape of the letter, then you're allowed to do that. But here, that doesn't look like a Ches anymore. And therefore, this one you can't stretch. But good point. When is this true? When you take two Zayins, the gag rochov on a very broad roof. Because that's not considered a roof, a bridge, which is sort of meshupa, which has got to be sort of up and down, sloped. According to Rashi, we just said you've got the two Zayins, and then you've got a bridge up and down. But according to Rashi, the bridge of the Ches is actually horizontal. So therefore, according to Rashi, without sort of a sloped roof on top, even if you're marich harbe, according to Rashi, that's still considered the Ches, even if the two Zayins are quite spaced, quite far apart. Even if the gag is considered a square and is not rounded. Now, what if you did the Ches, instead of doing two Zayins, you did two Vovs? Right? You can picture that? The Oikedalet Vov, Oikedalet Zayin. So, V'chateres al Gabom. So you've got, for example, this. You've got, instead of doing the two Zayins, you've got two Vovs. You did it like that. Or you did a Dalet and a Vov. Or a Dalet and a Zayin. So it all looks like a Ches, but it's not quite right. So says Mishnas Sofrim that if you did that, it's going to be kosher b'di'evet. It's going to be kosher b'di'evet. One second, I've just lost the place. Kosher b'di'evet. Because it hasn't changed into another letter. It's still, pretty much like a ches. So b'di'evet is kosher. And we call mokum. Im efshel lesakein, if it's possible to fix it, ligro yisron ha'os v'chateteres yishab mkoimai, to sort of just to scrape away the surplus, the extra part of the letter, v'chateteres, which is the bridge between the two Zayins on the roof of the ches, yishab mkoimai can stay in its place. Kagoin ches shebetzmunosa hoya kedalad v'zayin. For example, if you have in the ches, it's made up of a dalad and a zayin. And you've got a bridge at the top, hadalad, v'lo b'sofa, not at the end of it. Yigram in hadalad miksosa shetasik mazayin. Just scrape away some of the dalad to make it into a ches. Yeah, for example, this. Yeah, so you've got a dalad, and then you've got a zayin, and then you've got a bridge on top. Now you know you should have two zayins. So if you just scrape away the extra surplus bit of the dalad to produce two zayins like that, then that would be okay. Seder? Okay, Avol. I mean, the first word, we're halfway down the left-hand paragraph where it says Ches. In the Dirshu ones, it's my one, it's Samach Beis. So halfway down, the first word in the line is Avol. Avol im Oimed Besofa. But then, if it's at the end, then Yechalek Ha'is Kashiyigram min Adalad. Then, if you were to split it, you're going to break. This is this bit. This is this diagram. It's all well and good if you do it like that, where you can scrape away the end of the dalad. But if by scraping away the end of the dalad, you're going to break your bridge, you're going to burn your bridges, right? So then you've got a problem. So avol im oimid b'seifa yecholek ha'es kashigum min dalad. You're going to split the letter when you scrape away the dalad to make it into a zayin. V'lo yelo tikun achakach b'tfilim mezuzah shemakev b'en shelo kasidron. Then you've got no tikun anymore because you've destroyed the tzur of the letter, and you're back to the problem of writing things shelo kasidron not in order. Al kain yesh lahach shebelo tikun. But we say this is going to be kosher without any tikkun, because in this scenario, being masakin it is actually going to make it worse. However, with the Sefer Torah, if you've got a ches which looks like a dalad and a zayin, oishnei vovin, af she'ein hotzei acheres mishum zeh, mikol makom b'chol gav netzorach lesaken ha'is. With the Sefer Torah, you should fix it until it looks like a proper ches. And you should really warn the Sofrim about this, because the shape of the ches that we've described, the two zayins with a bridge on top, it comes from the Gemara. And therefore you've got to get it right. But the b'diavad, if you made a little staff coming up from the ches, a chateres levad, or a chateres, or the bridge, then kosher. Yeah. So if you did it, if you did imosel leches makka levad, a chateres levad, then it's going to be kosher. This is what he's talking about. Eli, this is picture 12. Yeah, so if you did the chateres levad, or just a little makkah, a little staff coming up from the left-hand side, then b'diavad that's going to be a kosher ches. Okay. V'hagol Rabbi Kiva Eiga masik b'chidushav. Rabbi Kiva Eiga concludes in his chidushim that afilu nechs laches, even if you're missing a ches, hachateres, the bridge at the top, v'gam hamakel shoyches pshuta kaches in shelanu, that it'll be like a regular ches that we have without the chateres, the bridge, which is that sort of shape. Kosher b'diavad, that would be okay b'diavad. Rakim efshel lesakim bekal lasas lo makel yasa. If you could easily fix it by putting a little makel, a little vertical line on the top left-hand side of the ches, then you should do that. Because then it makes it into a lechatchila. Im nifsak gerech haches, if the foot of the ches breaks, and you're left with a yud, dai bekach, that would be okay. So here we are. This is the last picture on the page, number 15. So you've got a ches made up of two zayins with a bridge, and the leg of the either side is going to say, if it's broken off, that would actually, it looks more like a yud, that will be okay. So whether it's the left or right hand side, that is quoting. That would be sufficient. Prima Godim Psicha Mashikosov Yerali to Adin Ashar Osius, so Madanokata Prima Godim Sham Yerechimini Mishum Achrini Dizachasham Va'ayim B'Seif Ois Tov. Look at the end of Ois Tov Mashikosav Nasham. Now, Im Chateres, if this bridge, I've got to turn over 2 pages in my dirshu. If this bridge she'alaches lo haya dovuk laches. It's an interesting scenario. So here, Eli, this is on the next page now. This is on page 287, where the bridge of the chatateres of the two Zayins is not touching the tops of the Zayins. That's what he's referring to. There's a little gap. So if she'alaches lo haya dovuk laches, I'm on the top of page 124 in my version. Ach lo haya nika lehedja ha'afrada, but you can't quite make it out. It's not clear that there's a gap. It looks like a ches. Muta letakna afilu b'tefillin mezuzas. You're allowed in tefillin and mezuzas to fix it up. Ve'ein b'zeh mishum shelo kasidron. That's not a problem shelo kasidron. But if it was very clear that there was a gap between the bridge, the top, the roof of the ches, to the Zayins, which makes up the ches, then it's considered you've lost the name of the letter, and then you're in trouble. What if it was a gap just on one side, because it's a bridge going from the left Zayin to the right Zayin? Then maybe you could be making even if it was very clear that there was a gap on one side. Okay, ad kan the ches. Now let's move on to a test. Ois test. Yeah, ois test. Harosh hayemini tiakof ma'at l'seicha. So let's look at the picture test. You can see it in the Dirshu ones. You've got a picture of a test. The test, here you go, is looks like a chof with a zayin. Can you see? It's amazing how all the letters are sort of made up of component parts. So it's like a chof with a zayin, and the top of the chof is rounded and it bends into the actual letter. So that's what he's describing over here. So it says Mishnah Berurah, Ois tes harosh hayemini, the right hand side of the tes, tiyeh kofuf ma'at l'seicha, it should bend it round into the letter. V'lo yeh kofuf harbe, it shouldn't bend too much. V'harosh hasmoli tiyeh kazayin, the left hand side of the test should be like the letter Zayin. U'shloisha tagin al rosha, and there should be 3 tagin, because we know the tagin are on which letters? Shatnus gets, right? So the test is one of them, and therefore there should be the tagin on the left hand side of the test. Aval rosh hayemini ye oigel kavov, but the right hand side should be rounded. Like I just described. So on the test, the chof part, it should be round and not square. And so too at the bottom part of it, it should be rounded. So what he's just described is this. Can you see? The test, it should be rounded at the top, rounded at the bottom. It's like made up of a chaf and a zayin. The zayin should be a regular zayin with 3 tagin on the top of the zayin. Okay. V'chol ze eina ma'akev b'di'eved, and none of this is going to be ma'akev b'di'eved, levad b'inyan kofaf harba, unless it was very bent over, or very, to tzorchin and din, if it was very bent over, then it's a bit of a problem. I don't think he's got a picture of that. Okay. V'ayim b'be halacha. V'li nira, and it appears to me, dim lo haya kofaf klal, what if it was not bent over at all? Then you've got to show it to a child. If the child tells you this looks like a test, then you're okay. But either way, you should fix it up afterwards. And it's not a problem of shelo kasidron, because either way it looks like a test. And if you just want to fix it to make it better, then that's better. If it wasn't bent over at all into it, and the child doesn't recognize it as a letter test, you've got a shaila whether in tefillin this is a problem of shelo kasidron or not. Maybe it will be the same halacha here. We're not used to a test without it being rounded and bent in. And therefore it's not considered nishtanis rosa v'tzorchin. Okay. You've got to be careful when you draw the test. The letter test should be like that the right hand side should not be touching the left hand side. So for example, if you've got that, can you see? If you've got the test which is touching the Zayin, you've got a problem. So he says, here, Where is it? That the tops of the test, the right hand side and the left hand side, shouldn't touch. If you can scrape away a little bit, now, what if the left hand side of the test didn't look like a Zayin? That the top of it was rounded off. But you did have the tagin, the three vertical lines coming out of the top of the left hand side of the test. It's questionable. That which we said that the letters Shatnas gates need tagin, need these three things. It means that the letters, that they should be the tops of these letters should be rounded off. They should be square. And that is the ikuva. Whether or not you can fix it by making kosher tagin. And you can't bring a rye from the prima godim that b'diavad is kosher if it wasn't a proper zayin. Why? Because maybe it didn't look like a zayin. It doesn't not referring to the agula part of it. Maybe not even in passing like the rain. Okay, but say the Adkan letter test, and Mr. Shem will do Yud on next week. Okay, good Shabbos and Mazel Tov to Mikey. Shalom Zacha tonight.